Welcome to the Moms Like Us podcast, where moms just like you learn strategies, systems, and skills through expert interviews and real-life insight designed to take your marriage, mothering, and home to the expert level. Hi, I'm Mona Corwin, your mom mentor and host, author, international speaker, and the founder of the Moms Like Us Academy. I've been coaching moms for over 25 years, and I have some really good news for you. Motherhood isn't a natural talent. It's a skill, and you can learn it. You can crush it at motherhood instead of motherhood crushing you. So let's get to today's show. Welcome to part 2 of Table Talk. And we are moms just like you, sitting around talking about things that matter. And moms like us have to do this. We have to be intentional about playing with one another. We are going to have a talk about a word that we've been using in our Mom Like Us. Like, moms use this word a lot, and it is a real common word, and it's called being intentional. There are words that we use to identify, and self-care is one of those things. We say self-care, and everybody just automatically thinks, oh, go get your nails. Oh, done. Oh, I just need an hour to do this. Self-care is not selfish, but it has to be sustainable. And there are things that are really, truly self-care that are more than a bubble bath. They're more than a glass of wine with your friends. They're more than a bachelorette. They are intentional. We talked about those things in part 1 and why self-care is so good. Now, this time we're going to talk about how we can weave self-care into our lives and some ideas to do just that. And you might just find some new definitions that you would prefer to use also as we talk. So, in part 1, you were talking about something really unique about having free electricity between 8 and 5 during the day. And I wanted her to elaborate on this because self-care is actually taking care of your budget. If you are stressed out on your budget and you don't have enough money to do the things that you need to do, then you're stressed.
Can't do the things you want to do.
No, and so you are more edgy, and you're not taking care of yourself or your family or your home or your marriage, or your spiritual life. We have to take our self-care all the way across the board and truly every avenue of our lives, including making our homes, being curators of our homes, and making those homes a place of heaven on earth, a place of peace, a place where it's a place of belonging, a place where you can fight and mess up and still be loved and still be, right?
Yeah, it's good.
And I think that, so tell me about this 9 to 5 free electricity. Don't you want to know?
I am not at all like the electricity person by all means. I don't know how
And if 6 of us buy your electricity, then we all get free electricity.
It's not even one of those. It's just
totally don't put it out there.
This is not an ad for TXU, but it's they do free nights or whatever. So it's you get to pick the hours, and so ours was 8 to 5, and for us, it balances out. Again, I'm sure the rates are higher during the day, but we turn the air down at night, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, so nighttime, we just do everything at night. We run the dishwasher. We run the
dryer.
The washer and dryer. All those things that put high electricity or whatever. And then again, first thing in the morning when everything's still kind of at peace from the night of sleep, that we've had, is when I can unload the dishwasher. It takes 5 minutes tops, and then I can unload the laundry, and that takes or fold the laundry, and that takes again maybe 5 minutes tops. And so I've just spent 10 minutes that would normally create hours of work if you've let it pile up. And it makes our day just run. We have this fluidity, and my husband, who was not the most, I love you, honey, was not the most clean before I met him, has gotten in this rhythm too, though. Habits form, they say, over 21 days or whatever. We've been doing it a lot longer than 21 days now. And so everything is just kind of in this rhythm that really helps.
And that's one of the things that, as a mom mentor, I do teach too, and that's why we have our Mom Life Planner, It's to teach rhythms and to have like habit, I call them hacking habits and attaching them to other habits so that these kind of things can become just natural and normal. Like you said, you just get up in the morning, you just unload the dishwasher. It's not like dirty, the dishes are there. Every time you walk by the sink, you're like, oh, I gotta do those dishes, and oh my gosh, those dishes. And that puts a level of stress on our bodies that is just not necessary if we will totally get into the rhythms of life.
Right.
So
And you've
I love
chosen
that.
to take some of those monotonous tasks off your plate at the time when you're the best version of yourself.
It's true.
Good.
Instead of
That's
waiting
awesome.
until you're at the worst version of yourself at the end of the day when you're exhausted and you're tired, you're fed up, your husband's already asleep in bed, your kids have been asleep for hours, and you're still up just ticking away, room for room, here, things in your hands all over the place. Like, you've chosen to take some of that stuff off your plate, put it on a shelf, put it away when you're at the very best in the morning before you've had the opportunity to be irritated, frustrated, tired, hungry, something has happened.
Unexpected comes up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's so smart.
Given when you're cooking during the nap or whatever, or things like that, or when the kids are having downtime, because we've done reading time before. Whenever I was a nanny, we did reading time while the other ones were napping if they were out of nap schedule. When you're cooking, you still clean up as you go type thing. Let me also just give you my secret. If you're having one of those weeks, Costco, they make good pre-made meals.
So does Market Street.
Sorry,
Market Street is the
yes,
pre-made.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get yourself a pre-made meal, folks, and it still could be healthy, but it's there, and you're able to quickly put it
But
together.
the time to do that, the time to figure that out is not when you're stressed out.
It's not when it's 5:55 and you're having dinner at 6.
You need, like in the back of the Mom Life Planner,
Yep.
you need a list of the 10 favorite meals that you have, and that always you have the stuff for it in the thing, and some prepared meals that you have ideas. Because when you're stressed out and you're tired and you're in a hurry, the last thing you can do is think of something creative to do, and really all you want to do is pull cereal out. And
that's okay.
it is okay.
That's okay
But it's
sometimes.
not necessary because you really can if you are prepared and make a habit of using the things that will remind you. Again, that is self-care to keep your stress level down by the franticness that is a mom's life. And it's just because we never know what's going to happen.
I actually really like meal planning.
You have some good ideas.
I like
about
meal planning. So one of the things, and I have to put it in my calendar because I have meetings with people, and I have people that come over for discipleship, and my life is full, and my newborn just sits there and cuddles, so sweet. But I have to put in my planner, this is the morning I'm going to the grocery store, and this is the 2 hours I'm blocking for meal prep. Like, I have to put it in my planner, or at 5:40, I'm looking up, I'm like, oh, was today taco soup? I don't remember. I'm out of 3 cans of beans. And that doesn't sound stressful. That sounds little, but Mona's right. Those little stressors, like after a while, you're so overwhelmed, right? So I chop my veggies. I get them in my separate little containers, and I have everything ready to go so that when it's time to prep for dinner, Eva's at the counter doing her homework. Isaac's usually reading a book or doing a puzzle or playing Legos. Ben is usually asleep, and I'm talking with Eva about her day while I'm putting in the vegetables that have already been cut in the thing to make the spaghetti. One thing I said to Kyle years ago was, I want to make sure our home is somewhere that I want to be. I don't want to just view, and I think part of it could be self-care, right? I just got to get out of here. This is what, real life happens, or real joy or real refreshment or real peace happens when I'm out of here. No, I want to create a home that I want to be in. I want to create a home that my kids want to be in. When they are off at college, they want to come visit, not because I need them to come visit, but because they know they're home, right? They know that they're accepted and loved, and there's joy and there's laughter. And some of that happens when there's a little work on my end. But the self-care part isn't necessarily the chopping, which is a little relaxing.
I love
but it's not
chopping.
But it's not necessarily the chopping, but it's the,
sauce
look how relaxing, look how fun dinner is right now. That's that kind of kudos, that's kind of self-care to me, because I'm like, oh, I did this. I created this wonderful moment, or this rhythm in our family, or this different thing. And so part of it for me is meal prep. And I always keep 2 things in the freezer, because one day last week, Eva surprisingly didn't have homework. And I was like, we're going to the pool. And then I was like, super fun mom, and that's self-care too. But, you know, I think part of it too with that is saying, what's something that I really love? And that is the thing that you do with your kids. Like, yeah, you want to get to know your kids and you want to let their talent shine and whatever. But, you know, I know for me, like, my mom always cooked growing up. And I love being in the kitchen with her, and I love being beside her, and I love, like, helping my grandmother set the table. And, like, that is a very big part of just my growing up. And my kids love to cook with me. My kids love to bake. And they, you know, they'll make the deviled eggs while I'm, like, cooking something in the kitchen. And that is fun for us. You may say, I hate cooking. Then do a freezer meal, and if your thing is art, let the kids be coloring at the table while you're sticking in the freezer meal and talking to them. You know, so I think part of self-care is going, who am I? What do I enjoy? And how can I translate that to be an enjoyable life for us? You know, not just that life happens when I finally get away and that's when I'm cared for, but I'm also cared for in the company of my kids. I love their company. They're so funny to me. Like Isaac this morning, he was sick. Please don't call the truancy people. But he was like, my throat hurts. I just need to be home today. And I was like, does it really hurt? He was like, oh, I can barely talk. Don't worry. As soon as my mom took Eva to school, because my parents are in town for a few days, as soon as she took Eva to school, his voice miraculously came back. Because he talked for 1 hour with his little binoculars on. He's 5, about every bird that he'd seen the last 10 minutes. Like,
so cute.
I love him. Like, I love his company, you know? Like, I don't feel like I have to get away from him. But some of the hard work is disciplining your kids and like training your kids and helping your kids, because if they are the kid that's screaming and having a meltdown all the time, you probably are pulling your hair to get out of the house nonstop. But do some of the hard work of caring for them and helping them, and then y'all can enjoy each other. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it does. But I also think that some of those tantrums and things like that are happening because we have poor expectations for our kids. Some of our kids need to get out. You know, like we're keeping them inside all the time, and I'm sorry, but I get cabin fever after a while too, you know. But you're looking at this child, there's like been some studies where it's like, you know, the little 1-year-olds like, you know, I mean, like their little attention spans are just everywhere. They're firing at all cylinders. And then like slowly over time, they start to be able to go, and then they slowly can sit. And we're expecting them to sit and play for so long, and they're like, I'm tired of this, you know, or they're not napped, or they're not feeding, or, you know, whatever. They don't have the things that they need to set them up for success. And I think that's a big part too of like, we need to make sure. That's why we go to the pond once a day. For me, it's peaceful. He's just kicking his legs in his, you know, stroller, and he gets to see the ducks, and he gets to, you know, we're able to talk about God's creation, and I'm just able to have peace for a little bit. He's able to explore and see everything, and eventually he'll be able to chase the ducks, you know, like, and for us that's like, it brings peace in our day. But we're also getting out, and I'm not sitting there having to entertain him the whole time and exhaust myself and trying to figure out how to make sure he's happy.
It really is amazing. Y'all are such good moms anyways. But there are moms that don't know how to mother. They don't know how to mother. They didn't see it. They didn't see it growing up. What they're seeing on Instagram is women in yoga pants with puke on them, and it's like, I mean, I take pictures of these memes that are just so honoring. They're mean to themselves. Right. It's dishonoring to their role as moms. It degrades their children, and when I see those, I know that it's a mom that hasn't been encouraged in the things that we're talking about, in finding joy in your motherhood and finding practical ways to make the home truly the center of our world, because that's what God did. God put us in a garden as a family. That was his goal. The Garden of Eden wasn't the whole world. It was a place in the world. Garden of Eden, and now we're supposed to make this on earth as much like the way God would have it as we can. It's not, let's go out into the world to do the most important work, and then we come back here and we shower and we eat something quickly and we hugs and kisses, homework, sign papers, and everybody get ready, because tomorrow we're doing the important work that's outside, the real important work that's outside of us. No, the important work is in here.
Yeah, and is your home a drop zone?
Yes.
Or is it a home? And we get to decide that.
You do.
With our choices, with our rhythm, with our activities. And a big part of us is we get to decide that as the mom, as the women, you know?
But that's not what's happening. In our culture, it's like, this is not important. Like, wherever you put your kids for school, your responsibility to teach them things is still part of your job, your role as a mom. And I had a woman that said, no, we're going to put our little one in public school and we feel really good about it. And I'm like, awesome, great. And she said, but they're not going to get chapel and they're not going to get the, you know, the stories and the religious classes. And I'm like, that's not anybody's job. That's your job.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, oh. And I said, baby, you're supposed to be like homeschooling the religious part of their life. And
no matter where they go to school. Even
no
if
matter
they're in a
where they
Christian
go to school.
Yeah.
And raising them up with character and everything. And this is a full-time role for moms and dads. And it needs to be happening in the home, which is why I don't believe we're homemakers. We're not housewives. We are curators of our home. We are curating what happens here and what will grow here. And little mama, if you don't know how to do these things, then you need to find a type of student that will.
Yeah,
Right.
you
It's
need
not
to learn.
hard.
Yeah, and there
Most
are
of
people,
you have college degrees, MBAs. Don't tell me you can't read a recipe. You can't. Fail fast, learn, and then make something else. Or
Well,
go to Mark Street.
And I always think of, what do they say? Be careful how you talk to your kids. It becomes their inner voice.
Yes.
You know? And I was so blessed. I know I am so blessed that my mom is amazing. You know, like the first word I think of when I think of my mom is my biggest cheerleader. Like this morning, like I said, they live overseas, but they're in town for 3 or 4 days. I'm wearing shorts and a shirt, right? Nothing too exciting. She's like, oh, you look so gorgeous. And I was like, oh my gosh, why don't you live in the toy room? Like, why don't you just live here? You know? And she's like, can I feed Ben this morning? My arms ache for him when I'm not in town. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, so what do I hear? Like, I don't leave there thinking, oh my gosh, my mom is probably so exhausted with my kids. I better hurry up and get home. Like, I better hurry up and like, oh man, I need to like get some roses for her, some flowers, like, because she's doing this nice thing for me. I'm thinking, my kids feel enjoyed right now. Like, my kids feel cared for right now, you know? Like, my inner voice, when I step into a meeting or when I step in somewhere, several times, is I'm like, I'm Bob Kendrick's daughter. I can sit at this meeting like anyone else can. Right?
Well,
and what don't we want to give that gift to our kids? Because
do.
one of my friends, like, every time I'm around her, she's in front of her kids, she's like, oh my gosh, they're getting on my nerves so bad. I got to get out here. I'm like, that's their little inner voice. When they walk into kindergarten, we're kidding ourselves if we don't think that they're like, I don't know, would anybody want to play with me? Right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, you had it. You had a good thing. You got good self-talk going on. Me and you didn't have that. You want to address that for the moms that didn't have that and they might not even realize they're doing it?
Well, I think what struck a chord with me when you were talking about how moms aren't really doing this, I feel like a lot of times it's because you did grow up in an environment that wasn't like that. And so you want to get out of there because you feel like a failure at home. You feel like a failure in your marriage. You feel like a failure when you're raising your kids. You don't want to be home and you don't want to be with your kids because it just makes you feel bad about yourself. It makes you feel like a failure. And so I think you just got to take a deep breath and realize that that's not true and go back to what I was talking about earlier when what you're allowing as part of self-care is knowing that identity in Christ. What are you hearing that you're believing? What are you allowing to be spoken over you? What are you allowing yourself to tell yourself?
Yeah.
And just being cautious of the fact that there are some things that maybe you're hearing and believing and saying to yourself that aren't true. And that for me, it was just saying, I don't know how to do this. I didn't grow up in a home where I saw a mom that was present and there. And, she just worked all the time. My mom was a single parent. My dad wasn't around. She did the best she could, and I appreciate that. But I didn't have that culture. I didn't have that curator, that home that was full of peace where I felt loved and supported and cared for. And so reaching out and finding somebody like Mona, finding someone that can mentor me and saying, I don't know how to do this. I don't even begin to know how to do this. And it's going to really be starting at square one. But I'm teachable and I'm willing to learn. And I think that's just recognizing that just a humbleness that I'm not above being told that that's not how you do that, or that's not what you're supposed to be doing, or you need to change this, or you need to learn how to do this, and just being willing to take it back to the Word of God and just stay in a place of just having a humble heart and being teachable and being willing to learn, being willing to say, what else do I need to know? What else do I need to learn? Where else can I get that information? Who else knows about that? Where can you find a book about that? Who's teaching a class about that? Where do I see this being modeled? You know, and like I was saying earlier, when I look at Mona's life, it gives me hope, because I can say, okay, I see a marriage that is being prioritized and being put first, being modeled for me. I can learn from that. And the same thing for my children. Maybe I don't know how to show them that, but I can at least put them in an environment where they can show that until I learn how to do that. And I just think it's about staying humble and just recognizing that I don't know. But there's someone out there that does.
It's the being teachable part. You know, like whenever we look for someone that we're going to spend our time discipling, we say, are they faithful? Are they available? Are they teachable? You know? And those are the three things that we look for. And do we think that what we are doing in our home is important enough to be faithful to the Lord, to be letting Him fill us up continually and teaching us? Are we available, or are we on Facebook in the other room, like dreading that we have to be around? And are we teachable to find a mentor and to be vulnerable with friends and to say, like, I remember one of my best friends in New York is hands down one of the best moms you'll ever meet, as far as like she even had like little kids at her house that she would teach. She was so amazing. And I remember one time I was like, okay, how in the world is Fairly like 11 months old and she sits and just eats, and like she sits until the meal's over and then she gets down? Like my 11-month-old is like pulling and doing and then like, you know, grabbing food off of his plate, and like, how does she do that? And she's like, well, gosh, I guess I need to think about what I'm doing. And I was like, I'm coming to your house at dinner and I'm watching what you're doing. So I sat at her house, and Fairly, like, one time she read a book to her, one time, I mean, she's like engaging her at the table, and I'm like, oh, I haven't been doing that. I've been just expecting you to sit here, you know, like you're 10. And, but it took me going, this is something I want to learn, and I don't feel like you're better than me. I don't feel like
threatened by you.
I don't feel threatened by
It's
you.
not
I feel
about
like this is something I want to learn, and you do this really well, and you do it well enough where I'm like, I will even bring food over if you will just show me how you do this, you know? And so part of it is humbly going, hey, guess what? No mom is perfect. No mom does self-care perfect. We need to get back to self-care. We're teaching and like talking about different stuff. One thing I do for self-care is I go to the gym 1 hour a week. Now, granted, I should probably go about 12 hours a week, but it's 1 hour, and I love it because Kyle has said, you know what, I will work from home and go to work 30 minutes later, which I don't feel bad him doing because he works several nights. And so I go to the gym and they're playing like 90s rap, and so I'm kind of cracking up because I'm like, oh, these are songs that I listened to in college. And it's like all people in there that are my age, and so there's not like a 15-year-old that's crushing the workout, and like I'm like
Right.
But that's part of my self-care is I go to the gym once a week. I do like meal prep. I make sure that when it's a play date, it's not just like kids that my kids enjoy, but it's also a friend that we can sit there and laugh and talk, and that fills my cup, you know? So sometimes it's alone time, sometimes it's, you know, friend time, but I, like we said last week, like I have a planner, and I plan to make sure that I'm getting those things, because if I don't plan it, it's not going to happen. And I don't expect my husband to have a shared calendar and go, oh, but are you making sure like you have some, whenever he says those things, it's like, hey, I see that you are exhausted. What are you doing? Right? But I don't expect him to be like my admin.
No.
Right? And so part of self-care is me going, I am worth not just living till I'm 35, but I like my role is important enough in this house where I want to be healthy and filled with joy and filled with peace, so I can give those gifts to my kids too. And so part of that's planning, part of it takes hard work, and part of it is like developing something that's sustainable.
That's really good.
So.
One of the things that I love to do, and I did this for myself, we talked about it for just a second earlier, that your soul satisfaction, it's like your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotion, and it's the part of you that's unique and special. It's your personality, it's the things you like, and God has given you gifts and talents and abilities that are unique to you and all those things about you. And you're not supposed to take those and put them over here when you have a baby or when you get married. And it doesn't mean you get rid of it. It means you might not get to do it to the level that you did it before. But when you do your self-care, dip out of that. If you have loved doing hair and you have loved braids, and when people come in, you're just like, oh my gosh, I love this. And how did you use that? This whole thing, yeah. When you do that and you love those things, then when you have some time, 15 minutes, because someone hasn't woken up for their nap or you waiting in carpool, then why don't you get on Pinterest and scroll braids? Something that satisfies the thing that you love. Instead of being on Instagram and looking at all the ways you're not, why don't you feed that part of you that has gifts and talents that God created just in you? For me, I was a quilter and I loved quilting. And so when I would have, my kids would be taking their nap, we didn't have the scrolling, but I would have my books and I would just look through the pages of that, and it satisfies your soul. And if you don't do that, like you don't come out of your self-care time or the time where you've gone just to have a cup of coffee, if you come home and you don't feel refreshed and satisfied, even if it's messy in the house, then it might be that you need to look at dipping into those gifts and talents and satisfying the soul. And you mentioned that.
Well, and I'll also say, just to go off of you, I came from a broken home, you know, divorced family, etc.
Yeah.
And I will say to you, mama out there, that the one that feels like you are this ball of mess. That's all you are right now. You feel like everything's just, and how do I even untangle any bit? It takes one little strand at a time. You
That's
can't
beautiful.
untangle the entire thing all at once. And it takes healing from that brokenness of that, and almost accepting this was my narrative. But God's got such a greater narrative for all of us. And he's all about redeeming, and he's all about healing, and he's all about, but those things take time.
Give yourself grace.
You know, give yourself some grace.
I was just about to say
Give
that.
yourself, and I do think that that's probably for most of us the biggest self-care we could do
is give ourselves
is to spend some time healing our soul, and caring and being able to see where the brokenness is. You have to look into the brokenness, kind of almost like you're giving your birth, you know, like you have to almost go into that pain in order for that contraction to be over with. You always have to go there to be able to start healing, so you can start seeing, what can my family, what can my narrative look like? It's part of this bigger narrative that God's had this whole time, right? Of redemption through Christ. Like, we're so grateful. But what can my family narrative look like to the world? But also to each other. How can we learn to love well? How can we learn to serve each other well? How can we? And that is going to be what grips your soul and starts pulling those strands. And it is going to take, just start one thing.
Yep.
Just for the next 2 or 3 weeks, start one thing. Whether it's the dishes every night and starting every morning, whatever. And slowly starting that, let that rhythm start. Don't do everything at once, because then you're going to feel overwhelmed, chaotic, and you're going to throw your hands up in the air and you'll be like, forget this, I can't do it. You know, and it's just not going to change. But time, just give yourself time and grace and prayer. Lots of prayer.
We are out of time.
Well, let me say, I think you nailed it with learn to love well, and give yourself grace, right? There's some weeks that I look at my calendar, I'm like, oh no, I forgot to schedule a morning where I have, you know, this, and this. And now it's like all meetings all week. What have I done? You know, and so give yourself grace that you're not perfect. You weren't meant to be. If you were meant to be perfect, we wouldn't need a perfect Savior. You know, so give yourself grace that you're learning this. Get some friends that will learn it with you, that can help you out. You know, maybe get a mentor, and give yourself grace, because, man, if you would have seen me different spots in my mom life, I didn't do this well. You know, I feel like it's just now with this third one that I'm like, oh, I see that was necessary. Like, I see that sleeping is, you know, important. Like, things that should be so obvious, right? But I think I didn't have the permission to care for myself. because I saw it as my job. I see this as my job. But even with any job, you have downtime, right? Like you have time where you have paid vacation or like whatever it is. And so I think realizing to give yourself grace and to learn to do these things. Like this isn't something where you automatically go, oh, I know the 3 things that would create rhythm in my home. That there's probably 20 blogs that say that, 3 things to create rhythm. But that's not your home. You need to get alone with the Father and say, okay, in my home, where are the places that are out of order? Like in my speech to my husband or in the way I talk about my kids or to my kids, where is the disorder? You know, Lord, you have to show me these things and you need to give me some community and pray, give yourself grace, and also realize we don't already have the answers. We have to learn them because you're different than every other mom.
So true. And Jess, you got a wrap? You got something to wrap it up?
I mean, just basically what I said at the very beginning, that self-love
we go back to
is all rooted in your identity in Christ, and pulling that thread and starting the healing and giving yourself grace and knowing for sure that you are wholly and fully loved by the Father completely in every way, and that grace is sufficient for today. And just taking a deep breath, taking it one day at a time, and just remembering that, you know, that you're loved.
Love it.
And moms like us do things like this. But moms like us, more importantly, lean on one another. We lean on our God, and we help one another live a life that is honoring to Him. And our culture isn't like that. And so we have to make a way for ourselves. And I hope that you've enjoyed this table talk with our friends. And we will do this again. Thanks for coming, y'all.
You should tell us what topic you want to hear about.
Oh, yeah. Why don't y'all tell us what kind of topics, DM us or comment below what topics you would like to hear us talk about on the table.
Bye.
Hi, I hope you liked this episode of the Moms Like Us show. And if you did, I hope that you'll share it. You'll share it with another mom friend because, you know, moms like us do things like this. I also hope that you will check out the Moms Like Us Academy, where we take ideas like we've been talking about on the show, but we go deeper. We just don't get inspired and think, ooh, that's a really good idea. I think I want to try that. We actually learn how to do these things and why we need to. And then you know what? You have Mona, the Mom Mentor, and other master moms that teach the master classes in there. They come alongside and we don't leave you alone. We help you implement and really, truly change your mom life into the mom life you've always wanted to have, because motherhood isn't a natural talent. It's a skill, sweetie, and you can learn it. So go and check out the Moms Like Us Academy today and find me when you get there and say hi. Bye.